at the dawn of day. Marie Laveau had passed away in St. Louis Cemetery. She lays in a tomb. She was buried at night on the west of the moon. Oh, Marie Laveau. Oh, Marie Laveau. Hey, Marie Laveau. Hey, Marie Laveau. The folks still believe in the voodoo queen. Way down yonder in New Orleans. Way down yonder in New Orleans. That's it.
Welcome to Bloody Mary's Spirit Realm and Voodoo Paranormal. Our guest today is Orion Foxwood. He is a fairy seer, a conjureman, a psychic, and a very well-known author. Orion, welcome. I'm so happy to see you. I love you so much. It's 20 years that I met you as you've been visiting New Orleans, because this seems to be one of your, as you said, almost like a second home, and you come as often as you can, and my spirits here love you, but the spirits of the city love you, and I love you, and
I love you, dear friend, sacred woman.
And you're an author, you're a witch, you're a fairy seer, you're an incredible hands-on gardener, and that works with the fairy world, and I want to dwell on what that is, because I don't think there's really an understanding to those that work with spirits, especially the people that are coming in just from a layman's point of view as ghost hunters. They're not necessarily in touch with the mysticism and the nuances between types of spirits. How the ancestral realm and the fae connect, and how do you even tell the difference sometimes on who you're dealing with at a particular location? So maybe you can help us. And your books, I mean, name the books that are about your fairy seership. Sure. You've got the
Fairy Teachings, and that's published by R.J. Stewart books. And then the Tree of Enchantment, published by Red Will Weiser.
Okay.
Those are the two on fairy work.
Okay.
Okay, and then I have others, witchcraft and conjure and that sort of thing. The thing to understand is in the old world, when people would talk about fairy and the fairy realms, they actually talked about the spirits of the human ancestral dead and the spirits of nature in the same breath.
Okay, so that was all incorporated. That's what's been forgotten.
Yes.
Because I remember I kept getting in contact with all these fae and fairy and pictures and other things and all through the cemeteries. I'm like, why are they here?
It's because
they guard the bloodlines, right?
They guard the bloodlines, and when there's still an old practice in Ireland where, say, a grandmother has died, and someone wants to share that information to the grandchild, right? They'll say, Grandma is gone to be with the fairies now. And on one end, you think, what a sweet, comforting thought. But what they're really saying is, the land of the human ancestral dead and the land of the fairy realms is the same strata of existence.
Okay.
That strata of life, the invisible side of Earth's existence, the subtle, the invisible, and the threshold, is where the human ancestral and the earth ancestral, which is the fair ones, the spirits of the earth, live. So it's that same strata. It's a whole range of life.
Cool.
Yeah, so I think that's the best way to explain it. And then, as you said, many times the fair ones actually protect whole ancestral streams, whole bloodlines. And they migrated, many of them migrated from the old world with old bloodlines.
Right, which of course spread out all the...
Yes.
The fairy diaspora.
Yeah, the fairy diaspora. And that's often called the witch blood, actually.
Okay.
Which is the
well, yeah, you'll say, oh, that person has fairy blood or elf blood because there's certain characteristics about them. But that also goes back to being witch blood that you're connected.
Yes. And I get that a lot.
And it is interesting that the fae can reincarnate as human. But can the human turn into fae, do you think?
Well, the word fae really just means enchanted. So some humans go into the other world and they never come back.
Right, you hear those stories,
They become
yeah.
teachers from the other world, like Reverend Robert Kirk
Or
from the
ascended
1600s.
masters.
I guess you could
Sort
think
of,
of it.
yeah.
Reverend Robert Kirk, who wrote The Secret Commonwealth of Fairies in the 1700s. It's the seminal text on Gaelic folk tradition. He was an Episcopal minister in Aberfoyle, Scotland.
I've heard about him, yeah.
He was transported right over to the fairy realms and was called, as they call him, one of the Order of the Justified Men. And justified meaning became a purified spirit nature.
They talk about that in voodoo too. They'll take you under the waters and bring you back. You know, when you come back, you're all enlightened.
Yes,
you know?
yes. We have the same thing in fairy tradition.
The more you look, the more you research, the more you meet people, the more similarities you'll find.
Yep.
If you want to.
This
and I try to look at that with an open heart as opposed to saying the more differences.
I love when I explained the fairy tradition to a wonderful Nigerian holy man. He's an Awo.
Yeah.
And he said, explain to me, and it's a beautiful accent, the fairy tradition. I'm telling him, he's shaking his head, and then he looks at me and just goes, Orisha.
Yeah, so like the Orisha, or the Jinn, or the Loa. I mean, these ancient ones have different names. They are the same type.
Yes.
And we just have to open our borders to them and not build up any more walls.
As long as people understand the fairy people are not just these little beings. Those little beings are cells in the body of something massive.
Massive and giant,
and powerful. Yeah. And you go to them with reverence. You go to them in the thinning times at dusk or dawn or at 3 in the morning. You make offerings of honey or milk or mead.
Peanut butter, you said, too. They love peanut butter?
Well, they like sweet things.
Yeah.
They like sweet things. They like song. They like things of the heart. Don't go give them cut flowers and things like that.
Right.
Because they make that.
Right.
They don't want us to.
Of course, that makes no sense.
You go to them at the thinning times. Often, as they say, go when sun nor moon claim the sky, but when both dance in a dance of shadow. And you can see them often out the corner of your eye. You'll see them as fleeting shadows running across the path that you're walking on. It's the little ones that often come home with us. Sometimes what happens is they read our blood, they read our ancestry, and they read alliances and allegiances that our ancestors had with them.
They recognize.
They recognize it. They read it. They're not following us because they want to hurt us. They're following us because they know us. Mm-hmm. Now, they can wreak havoc in our home. They can...
Well, maybe they're just trying to wake up that part of you that forgot. Wake up the part of you in the bloodline that they recognize to be one with them. But I've noticed a lot of, let's say, ghost hunters, people that aren't necessarily mystical or magical. They're just trying to get into it for recording and ghosts. They don't realize how much they're stepping into another realm that is psychic, that is mystic. You know, they don't understand, and they would automatically put everything into the classification of evil or demon.
Right.
When of course it's not. And they definitely don't understand the whole concept of the Fae.
Well, and this concept of the demons of the world living in the fiery places at the center of the earth is an anathema to the fairy tradition. Because in the fairy tradition, the fair ones, as they say, live in the hollow hills.
Right.
Now, the hollow hills are not just burial grounds and places they're the hollow places in the land. They live in the space between the particles of substance. They live in a dimension of earth life just one blink away from our normal everyday life. They interpenetrate our lives. The truth is, right now, as we teeter on ecological disaster...
I'm sure they're much more riled up than ever.
Oh, yeah, and we need them. We need them to show us the way back to live right and right relations.
Now I'm going to... You are very familiar with St. Peter... in your Ozark upbringing, as well as your voodoo connection.
More Appalachian. I came out of the Blue Ridge. Ridge. Yeah.
Geographically stunned that I am. Okay. So we have a door, because he's the opener of doors, the remover of obstacles, so I have a door just for him.
Yes.
So, open the way. And here I want to ask you a brief question about your take of the nature, spirits, fairy realm that you've encountered in New Orleans.
Oh, yes.
Is being that we have so much swamp magic and swamp creatures that I deal with, who I believe are mostly the fairy ones, the old ones too, is that what you run into more, or do you run into more of the ancestors? What do you feel here?
Well, I run into all of them. New Orleans, because partially the land claims it, partially the water claims it. So it's under the sea level. And to me, the whole thing
I
is
say we're amphibious.
Yes. To quote a term used in the old fairy tradition, it is betwixt and between.
Mm-hmm.
It is a tweeny place between water, sky, and land. And because of that, I always tell my students, if you can't contact the spirit world in New Orleans, you are deaf as a post. You know, because the elements, no element claims it, because all elements interpenetrate each other in this place. So here I run into ancestral beings, human ancestral, but fairy ancestral all the time.
I know we were in the forest and you said there were creatures you had never seen, which was unusual for you.
Yes.
Different types. You're like, who are you and what are you? And
it was beautiful. They were everywhere. They were climbing the Spanish moss. They were peering behind the trees. And they were so happy to be seen because
I work with that area a lot. Yeah, sung to it, fed
and they love you.
Beautiful pictures.
They
from
love
there too.
you, and they come out to you, and it's obvious that they are seen and
they have
revered.
been forgotten.
Yeah, because ever since the native people, the indigenous people, were driven out of here, they're not worked with as much as the human ancestors.
Right.
And what my elders always told me, they said, look to the human ancestors and then look to what they looked to.
Right. Keep going.
Look to the spirits that were older than them, the ancestors of Earth life.
I always say that you can get, everybody today is so happy they're getting so much information on the internet and this and that, but nature hasn't stopped talking.
Oh, no.
The secrets are still right out there. Mm-hmm. If you just be still and try to find that place to open them, the gifts are ever ready, and definitely here in New Orleans. And
here, a strange thing I see, that the ancestors of nature, which is what I call the fair ones, they will wear the garb of ancestors of humanity. Mm-hmm. So sometimes
to be familiar,
when you're talking to what seems like a spirit of the human dead,
mm-hmm.
you have to really ask them.
And you have to be specific when you ask, because they can't lie, but they can evade an answer. So you be very specific, and it's not always what you ask, but how you ask.
Are you human? Yes. Have you always been human? No. What have you been before? Mm-hmm. And then they start to show their luminous faces. And what are you now?
To realize that these things are still around us. And they're not really to be feared. They're to be understood and to be worked with. And New Orleans is a great place for that. It's also a great place for people to party and get drunk, which is what they get hung up in. They forget that there's more. But it's that water energy that does that to you,
There's more spirits in New Orleans than those that are in the bottle.
Come with me to the hunt. Gather and give offerings to our incredible oak grove in New Orleans. We're heading to Nola's Nymphaeum, this beautiful tribute to the natural nymphs who reside in the nearby waters of the bayou, just a few yards away, where the queen nymph herself lives, the Mississippi, Mama New, our mermaid energy. This enchanted spot and its wishing pond greets you as you enter the oak forest here. Many invisible creatures, nature spirits, and a whole strata of life make themselves visitable to me here. And my camera, as well, takes photographs of these things at certain times. These crossroads places, these liminal areas, these forks in the road, or folk in the road, as they call it here. Not just in the road or on the ground, but up in the air and in the water, the foliage of the trees, as well as the waters that surround. We have human spirits, nature spirits, spirits of animals, plus the hybrid encrypted types, too, who I believe are multi-dimensional. I've been busy photographing fairies, so to speak, my whole life. I'm going to show you some of my paranormal photographs, which include not only ghosts of the humans, but of the nature ones that surround us here, too. We have our own version of a green man. You may call him the Lord of the Forest. The Lord and the Lady have both been photographed out here. See that he has horns, or maybe you might look at it more as a hat. He has a mustache, a beard, and a brow.
was virile, king of the forest and of the hunt. But then we now see a creature of mammoth size. It's actually a form of colonial being or hive being, both one and many together. It's got a crooked back, a hump, and a long knobby nose, and spirits within spirits if you keep looking. Features we might equate with a troll. The enchanted tree is a favorite of mine. It's a hybrid type. It's our dragon, the Grand Crocodile, entwined all throughout this tree, complete with wings, claw, feet, serpentine neck, and head. Indeed, the dragon tree. This is where swamp magic lives. The canopy of the forest is filled with life. It lives above us, the veins of the river that pulse below our feet, and the center, the marsh. I'm collecting our protector, Ponchatoula, known to you as Spanish moss. This is for protection, for love, and for many other mystical uses. The Native American Indians here taught everyone else how to use Spanish moss, and I still greatly appreciate the spirit of Ponchatoula. If I hunt or gather in nature, I always pay, ask permission, and feed the spirits. I follow old school traditions. You bury the food as gifts to the invisibles. My mouth. Even in the heart of the city, swamp magic still lives. Bayou Chapatulas behind us here is an ancient tributary of the Mississippi. This island is original. We float in the center of what swamp magic still lingers and beats in New Orleans. The moss, the Ponchatoula, is very mystical and magical. The waters of the Mississippi herself, the palmetto trees, the oaks, the cypress that surround, the fish that swim, and the gators that make their way back in. They're all still right here in the heart in City Park. This is an ancient tributary of the Mississippi. As she kept changing her course throughout the years, she would leave these isolated areas of water that we call bayous. They're still, however, connected underneath the city, underneath the streets. This is the only part of the city that was not cemented over or pumped dry. The rest of this old Mississippi Trail is underneath all the streets going all the way out beyond Baton Rouge. But right here is the only part that wasn't pumped under. And still, since it's connected, you might have the gators that make their way in, and my son caught a 4-foot catfish here when he was 4 foot tall. There's all sorts of mystery. Swamp magic, swamp monsters too. You might meet the Loup-Garou.
Well, I have a special segment, which I usually do all by myself, but I'm going to have a special for you today. This is my kitchen witch moment. That I show many of the things that you can do just from your own cupboard. So, Orion, putting you on the spot, you have no idea I'm doing this to you. This is where most of my spices are. This is where other stuff is. There's things all around. You've got 5 minutes. Make some magic. Go.
Okay. No
Yes, okay.
problem. I don't need to get into anything.
Herbs in the okay. You're not gonna get into
I
it.
could turn on the flame itself, and I can conjure straight from it. You want me to conjure?
Sure. Except you don't know how to turn on the flame on this oven.
All right, everybody, make a wish. So hold a wish in your mind.
Okay.
Tell me when you got it.
All right.
Fire burning in the night with thy flames enchanted, by all the power of magic right, may our wishes be granted. As this fire sheds its gleam upon this mystic hour, let the fulfillment of our dreams gather secret power. Flame of magic brightly burn, O spirit of the fire, let the wheel of fortune turn and grant you your desire. I call to earth to bind the spell, and air to speed its travel well. Fire, give it spirit from above, and water, quench this spell with love. Discharge is true and proper it be, as we your will, so mote it be.
So mote it be.
I bet you never thought you could do so much just with
Such
the
a
fire
little
in
bit
your
of flame.
kitchen.
Cool. And there's so many things. We did garlic. We've done salt, and of course.
And if you got parsley in there, you can take a bath in parsley tea, and it's a money bath.
And there's lots of things. We'll do this
Eggs.
next week that you could do with the edible, incredible egg.
Edible.
The elder tree is over there. Take this quick. Watch there. Don't walk there. Quicker. Big ant. Watch. Get it too.
Oh, I did kick it, so now I don't know if I'm...
Well, this is very indicative of life. We've got to watch where we walk, watch what we might step in. Sometimes it's intentional and it's the people that we're at, or sometimes somebody actually throws a spell at you. You want to return it back? You want to mirror it back to them? Some swamp magic fire ants might do the trick. They may not bite everywhere, but here, when they sting, they keep on stinging. It feels like you keep on being bitten long after the initial attack. So if somebody's doing something bad your way, and it is totally justified, maybe roll their name up 3 times, write it, roll it, stick it down in those ants, or maybe their picture, or perhaps just the situation that is erupting. If that has a source, it'll find its way back. Those ants will send out scouts. There's a lot we can learn from the ants. They work together, and they're very protective. Fire ants. Watch where you step.